All right, guys, welcome to this first virtual lesson. I'm already having issues with the actual camera piece to this, so you guys won't have to look at my ugly mug for this first lesson. But what I want you guys to do, hopefully, when you were in the Google Classroom and you looked at this and you opened the video up, you also see if there's a Google Forms there. I want you to open that up while you're looking at this video too, because there'll be some moments where you need to pause it and then go back and answer a couple of questions because that's what it's attached to this presentation. Okay, and I think there's 2 or 3 questions in there today. But so the first one is, why did you take this class? All right, pretty simple. I just want you to, 1 to 2 sentences why you decided to take this class. If it was based off of a need, it was based off of maybe a career that you want to get into, or just out of pure curiosity of what this would be like. Whatever your answer may be, go ahead and put that in there now in that Google form and answer that first question. All right. So you can pause the video. All right. So let's look at the objectives of what you should be able to do after today. First off, you're going to be able to define sociology. All right. What that is by definition. Describe 2 uses of the sociological perspective. So we're going to tie this idea of sociological perspective with your sociological imagination, which will become a little bit more clear here in a few slides. And then look at the field of sociology. So distinguish between sociology from other social sciences. Like I said, and that will also be clear as we move forward here. So let's look at what actually is sociology by definition. Okay, so you have the scientific study of social structure. All right, and some of you are probably sitting there and going, well, what the heck is social structure? All right, and we're going to look at that here in a future slide. But to kind of break this down into what they call layman's terms, we're going to be studying human social behavior. All right, not as an individual, but as a whole, the masses. All right, how society functions. Okay, and look at why things like crime happen as a whole. Why, what, the who, what, when, where, why, and how of poverty, of crime, of race issues, of how we function as a society. Okay, our structure itself, of how different things like our education system, all right, the criminal justice system, okay, how those function, the good, the bad, the ugly, and all of those things that kind of exist within those separate ecosystems. Okay, so that's what sociology is. Like I said, the study of those things. So first thing we want to look at is sociological perspective. Okay, and first off, the question mark with perspective. What is a perspective? Do you guys have a perspective on, let's say, race in America? Do you have a perspective on that? You absolutely do. Okay. Why do you? Because you have some point of view. They're not the same. Your perspective is most likely going to be different than somebody else's. Okay. So you might answer, well, what the heck is the point of the picture that you have on there? Okay. This, what looks to be a young girl, probably has a different perspective than other people. Okay. Looks like she lives somewhat in a rural area based off of all the woods around her. Doesn't look like it's most likely, not necessarily that you have to be in poverty, but it doesn't look like they're millionaires. Okay. So her, based off literally where she lives, okay, the her economic, okay, circumstances, that's all going to play a role in her point of view or her perspective. Okay. We're going to do a demonstration when we're live. Okay. Not live, but when we're on the actual video chat, the Google Meet together. So until we get to that point, don't worry about the demonstration piece when it comes to this. Okay. So sociological perspective or sociological imagination, all right, is going to be understanding human behavior by placing it within its broader social context. Okay, so to further explain this is that we're not going to, this goes back to that original slide, we're not going to focus on the individual. All right, psychology focuses on the individual. And some of you may be taking that later on. All right, But sociology focuses on the group, all right, the masses. Um, so when you're talking about doing this, you have to look at things like a sociologist. All right, we're gonna have like I said, we're gonna have a later slide which will kind of ask you to do this, which will be one of your questions, and then we'll kind of brush it up towards the end and go a little bit further with this. But as you kind of starts your understanding of human behavior, we oftentimes think of, well, Billy's poor because he's lazy. All right, and maybe Billy is lazy, and maybe that is why he's unemployed. But sociology is going to look at beyond just Billy. We're going to look at poverty as a whole. What are a lot of the factors? Okay, because it's a low percentage of people that live in poverty just because they're actually lazy. There's so many other factors that on a lot of people's perspective might be that's why people are. Okay, but there are other factors beyond that that we have to consider when looking at these types of things. Okay, because it's our perspective that's going to shape our attitudes and beliefs. And if we can kind of look at things a little bit differently, okay, it might help change a little bit of our attitudes and our beliefs. We're not looking to necessarily change that, but you got to look at things from the sociologist side, as a whole. So we're going to jump into social sciences and what some of those are. So obviously, sociology being one of them, you're in this class. Anthropology is another social science. This is a pretty cool one. It investigates culture, mostly concentrates on pre-literate societies. Okay, some of them you might see like a or an anthropologist. Sorry, might be somebody who goes and lives with like a tribal society in South America, which obviously unique would be considered kind of like that pre-literate society. That's where some of their focus is, but when investigating culture, so that's an interesting one. I took an anthropology course in college, loved it, was pretty cool. Psychology. Psychology investigates human mental and emotional processes. Okay, like I said, this studies the individual, the individual mind. Okay, and focusing on how that drives some of our decision making. All right. Economics. Okay, you got a little bit of this last. If you're a senior, you got a little bit of this towards the end of the year, in your government class, where you looked at maybe like, if you guys remember, like expansionary, contractionary policies, those types of things, when governments spend money, when they make tax cuts, and all those types of things. That because that's what economics is. It's the study of the production, the distribution, the consumption of goods and services within a society or within a country, or yeah, kind of how that functions. So, and they apply those ideas to maybe politicians of when an economy is doing well, what should we do? When an economy is doing bad, what should we do? All right. So, and then we look at political science, which is the study of government. All right. Quite simply, the study of government. You could look at this, like I think of like some of my poli-sci college courses. I took one. It was like American political thought, and we went from like the Enlightenment era all the way up until present day. So we looked through all these different eras. So the Enlightenment, early America, Civil War era, Civil Rights era, okay, all the way up to present day. And we looked at a lot of the political thinkers of that time from both sides of the aisle, and kind of applied that idea, but that when studying government. But so there's a lot of different things out there that political scientists might do. And then history, all right. Hopefully you have an idea what history is as you study the past events in human societies. All right, typically out of all the social sciences, that's a lot of people's favorite. So I enjoy them all. Economics is sometimes tough, but call me crazy, I actually enjoyed economics. So, all right, so we're going to then flip back to this idea of how sociologists try to explain individuals. All right, so I'm going to put 3 questions up here. Okay, you're going to try to answer these with like a sociologist might. All right. So when it says a young man joins a gang to prove, you want to answer this as not um, Billy, Billy is trouble. The young man joins the gang to prove he's tough. Okay, that's not necessarily probably not a very good answer, but it's also an answer that it's not the way a sociologist would answer the question. All right, more women divorced because her husband is a dirty dog. That you're looking at the individual case when you answer it like that. Okay, you want to look at it from the broader perspective of why more women. And when it says more women divorce, it means more women file for divorce. More women file for divorce than in the past. That's what that's saying. And then teens commit suicide because. Okay, you don't want to just write teens commit suicide because of depression. That's true partially. Okay, but like I said, take that broader look at that question. So I want you to answer these three in that Google form. So go ahead and pause the video and go back and do that and get that part done. Okay, so next thing we want to look at are the goals of science and sociology. All right, and so one of the main goals of sociology is to explain why something happens. Okay, it's a pretty simple idea. Why let's go back to the idea of poverty. Why poverty? Explain the different factors of poverty. And because this is a social science, you can't just make broad assumptions. They do go in and make generalizations. So when they make a generalization, what that means is they're going beyond the individual case of Billy. We keep talking about Billy. So we're going beyond just his case. We're applying this to broader groups or situations. All right. For example, a sociologist wants to explain not only why Mary went to college or became an armed robber, but why people with her characteristics, okay, are more likely than others to either go to college or become a robber. Okay, so that's that idea of making those generalizations of the group maybe that she belongs in, not just Mary or Billy in their situations. Number three there is to predict, okay, in the light of current knowledge, what will happen in the future. So if we can predict why someone like Mary would become a thief, if we can predict those types of things, think about the benefit that then has to possibly society as a whole. Because if we can predict those things, we might be able to then influence them with different things that we can apply to those situations. Okay. You see the bullet points are there. They rely on systematic research. All right. Kind of that idea of what you guys have learned in your science classes. Okay. Of finding a situation, finding maybe a problem, and then doing research on it to come through those ideas. And they go through that scientific process, okay, when doing this. Research that can be reviewed by others, okay? So that oftentimes you'll see, like maybe in the field of sociology, they try to publish their research. It's reviewed by others, it's published, okay, as they go through what is considered a good process to get to their answers. And that's what the third bullet is talking about. It removes maybe secrecy and biases, because there's a lot of biases that are obviously out there that try to gear you in a specific way. And hopefully when doing their research, they're putting in a lot of different factors to come to a better solution than have that biasy in there. All right. And it says trying to move beyond common sense. And we think of a lot of things when it comes to what we'll look at in this class in sociology as you guys would think, well, that's common sense, that's why. But like we said, it was once common sense that the world was flat. Hundreds of years ago, the world was flat in many people's mind. Okay, but when we started to apply a little bit of science to that idea, we realized that you actually will not fall off the face of the earth, as that phrase is once said. All right. Everyone can be misguided. All right. Everyone has the ability to be misguided as they were in the past. I mean, some of that same stuff could be happening now. And so it's important to apply research and actual real data. And And data can be manipulated in itself too. And that's one of the things when somebody, you know, I think of like Facebook or some other social media where somebody posts a chart that they put up there. How did this research? What did they leave out when doing this research? And it's really important to look really into some of that stuff, to think of all the factors, because even some of that stuff that's put out there, obviously, they might be trying to sway you one way or another. So it's really interesting to look at how the science is done when looking at this stuff. So, all right, patterns in social structure. What we want to look at here, people behave differently around others. I don't think that is breaking news. Okay. So let's go to the idea of what is social structure, the pattern interaction of people in social relationships. So I'm going to use the example of school. And if you think about this, in school, teachers lecture, they give tests, they supply you information. Okay. They all do it a different way. They all have their own little knack of how they're going to give you this information. But at the end of the day, that's what teachers do. Okay. And then students, they're going to take notes. They're going to take tests. They're going to, complete worksheets. They're going to listen to lectures. They're going to do all of this stuff. Okay. In this structure of school. All right. So each year, the characteristics of my students change. Okay. I'm going to have different types of students. I'm going to have different individuals in my class. All right. You're going to go to teachers that are different. They might teach you in a different way, but at the end of the day, they're going back and falling on what the structure of school is. Every teacher is going to supply you the information. Every student's going to have the expectation of doing, that work and doing those things. That is the structure of school. And that's not unique to Sandusky High School. Okay. You can go to any school in this area, pretty much any school in America, and you're going to have a similar structure within that education system. Okay. If you move to Texas in 2 weeks and you go to school there, yeah, there's going to be a few things that are different. Okay. But at the end of the day, you're going to probably sit in a seat and you're going to receive information in some sort of way. And the teacher is going to deliver you information in some sort of way. That's kind of the idea of the education system. All right. With a few things that are different depending on where and what you're doing. All right. And so what this encourages is conformity. All right. And in groups, that's what they encourage conformity. Our school system, it encourages conformity. We oftentimes think of conformity as a bad thing, like, oh, you conformist. Okay. But there are parts of our society that need conformity. All right. And then you do have anti-conformists. Let's take the idea of, think of after, let's say the Cleveland Browns win the Super Bowl, which is a unique idea in itself. But let's say that they do. All right. And this will show you how people conform. If you're sitting at home on your couch watching the Super Bowl, and the Browns win, you're most likely, there's going to be, some hooting, some hollering. And that's pretty much what's going to happen. Now, take yourself to downtown Cleveland if they win the Super Bowl. All right. What might happen after the game is people will probably leave the bars and the establishments that they're at. They'll take to the streets, and you will have a quote unquote small riot. All right. Where you might literally have people burning cars, flipping cars. It happens after people win championships. Okay. Now think about this. Let's go back to the family that was watching it in their living room from Sandusky, and they're happy that the Browns won the Super Bowl. If they were to leave their house and go over to their neighbor and flip their neighbor's car, you'd be like, what the heck is going on here? Okay. But people conform in the other environment in downtown Cleveland. People are going to conform. Okay. If it's the expectation isn't to let's go out and flip cars and burn them, but all it takes is one group to do it. And before you know it, when you're in and around those others, people conform to the group. Okay. And we're going to be able to apply that idea, okay, to some other things that happen in our society, how we conform to the group that we're in. All right. Think of it this way. Your guys' lunch table conversations last year. I'm going to assume some of those conversations you would never have at your table at home. Okay? Probably a pretty good assumption by me. All right? Because we behave differently around others, as it says there. All right? And that's okay. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. All right? It could be bad. It could lead to bad behaviors. Okay? But for the most part, we're going to behave differently around others, and that gives us a little structure within different systems within our society. All right? This will definitely, like I said, will get expanded upon as we move forward. Next, I want to look at sociological imagination. All right. So, our perspective, so our point of view, or our sociological perspective, the broader point of view allows for sociological imagination. So, what is this? The ability of individuals to see relationship between their lives, our personal lives, and events in society. All right. So, let's take this back and ask why this matters. So, if a long time ago, okay, before industrialization, majority of families, okay, were larger. If you just look at the average family size, it was larger. Why? Based off necessity. Okay, so I said pre-industrialization. So you have more farming going on. You don't have as many machines to help you do things, and so children in larger families were needed to get things done. All right. So if you lived on a farm, you obviously need to farm fields and do those types of things. And as time moved on, and let's go post-industrialization. So after industrialization, you're going to have, right, people are going to leave rural areas. You're going to have migration patterns as we socially change, and it opens up opportunities for different groups within our society. You're going to see uh, like urbanization take off as jobs are there, as people don't need to be on the farms anymore, and you don't need as many people to complete the tasks. Okay, you're going to see a societal shift. So what does that do to the size of the family? People have smaller families. First off, they don't need a larger family. Secondly, it became a little bit more costly to have larger families. Okay, and so though now that's why you'll see more like one single child, smaller families. All right, and so you got to realize, is it just because, oh, we have smaller families? No, you use that idea of that impact to events in our society, of why smaller families now, understanding why that then happens. Okay, and being able to use that lens as you view things will not only help you in this course, but it kind of helps you view things a little bit differently with what's going around you in your life. Okay, all right, so here we go. So the Google form, you only had 2 questions on there. Hopefully you got those done. You submit that. There's a separate sheet on the section 1 lesson where you're going to open up the Google Doc, and it's going to say, based off of what we talked about today, you're going to use your sociological imagination to answer the following question. Why do people live in poverty? All right. And like I said, there's not going to be just one single answer. This isn't one sentence. All right. I'm looking for a paragraph here because I want you to think like a sociologist. All right. I want you to think in a lot of factors. Don't just think about Billy and Mary and Sue or whoever it is. Okay. And think of why they particularly live in poverty, but from a broader perspective, why do people live in poverty? And I'm going to get, if there's 50 of you turning this in, I'm going to get, quite a few different answers. There's not one right answer with this, but I want you to just think like a sociologist and apply those ideas and what you know in terms of why people live in poverty. Because if you write people live in poverty because they're lazy, that's not going to necessarily be using your sociological imagination. Are there people that live in poverty because of that? Yeah, absolutely. Is it a smaller percentage than what most of us think? Yeah, most often, yes. Okay, so but what I want you to do is use your sociological imagination to do your best to answer this question, and that's your last assignment for this. All right, so that is that. If you guys have any questions, make sure you contact me. Don't wait till I have the due date is Sunday night at by midnight. Don't wait until Sunday at 10 o'clock to throw those emails at me. I'll probably be sleeping. I can't stay up late anymore. But anyway, Um,